the community rating system, which is a voluntary program which is part of our overall floodplain management obligations and strategies. So I just wanted to take a brief time this evening to navigate the public through a series of resources that we have on our website. Okay, so let's get started. So if you're on the city's main webpage and you hover over departments, and I realize that some of those that are watching with the live stream don't get to see this imagery, so I'm going to try to talk through everything that I'm doing. And you hover over departments and get to community development, you'll see floodplain management pops up. So if you click on there, you'll be brought to this page where we have a series of helpful resources. So I just want to take a little bit of time to walk us through that and explain how that is part of our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program aims to reduce the impact of flooding on private and public structures. It does so by providing affordable insurance to property owners, renters, and businesses, and by encouraging communities to adopt and enforce floodplain management regulations. These efforts help mitigate the effects of flooding on new and improved structures. So all of the links here on the website, if you click on them, they'll bring you to the other pages. So here we have a link to FEMA's flood insurance webpage. Now, many of you may know that the National Flood Insurance Program is managed by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and is delivered to the public by a network of more than 50 private insurance companies, but about 95% of all flood insurance policies in the nation are backed by the federal government. So basically, this is a federally supported program, and part of our participation is that we inform the public about the importance of flood insurance. And flood insurance can really happen anywhere. You don't just have to be in a special flood hazard area. I mean, we saw this with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Communities such as Asheville, North Carolina, that are not particularly at high risk of flooding, happen to see devastating impacts of flooding. And FEMA likes to remind us that just 1 inch of floodwater can cause up to $25,000 of damage within your home. And most homeowners insurance does not cover flood damage. Flood insurance is a separate policy that can cover buildings, the contents in a building, or both. So it is important to protect for many of us, our largest financial asset. So you can navigate if you're in search of a policy or you want to find out what's covered in a policy. FEMA has this great link called floodsmart.gov, and you can get there off of our website. Okay. So if we head back to this floodplain management page, I want to talk a little bit about the community rating system. So the City of St. Mary's participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. Okay. Many of you who own property within a special flood hazard area, you may be required or are most likely required by your lender to have flood insurance, and that's due to our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. The community rating system, however, is a little bit different. It's a voluntary program under the Federal Emergency Management Agency's, or FEMA's, National Flood Insurance Program that allows communities to earn flood insurance premium discounts for their residents and businesses. Communities earn CRS, or Community Rating System, credit points for activities that promote flood risk reduction practices and encourage residents to purchase flood insurance. CRS class ratings are assigned at 500-point increments, and each improvement in a class rating nets an additional 5% in flood insurance premium discounts. The CRS class ratings range from 1 to 10, with 10 being the lowest rating and 1 being the highest and best rating available. Camden County, which has participated in the CRS program since 2013, is currently rated a Class 6 community. The City of St. Mary's joined the CRS in 2016 and is also now a Class 6 community. And the Class 6 rating provides residents and businesses with a 20% discount on their flood insurance premiums. Okay, one activity through which we can get these credits is through something called the Program for Public Information. And you'll see on your council packets this evening, as well as this presentation, there's a series of ways that we communicate the importance of flood insurance and the National Flood Insurance Program to our community members. And so this activity and others, which I'll discuss this evening, are ways that we get points through the community rating system. Now, if you follow this link, you'll get to this very interesting state profile that that FEMA puts out, and it gives you this sort of quick capture look at the state. Oh, we're not Alabama. Forgive me, everyone. That's just a glitch in the system here. I'll navigate you to the great state of Georgia. Okay, that's looking more like it. So here we see a state profile of Georgia. And what this is telling us, and you see these blue dots on the map, there are 54, only 54 communities that participate in the community rating system within the state of Georgia. So within our state, there are currently, and this was data updated just this month, so 45,000 flood insurance policies and flood insurance premiums of $30,538,301. So it gives you a snapshot of the programs. Of the 54 communities, 18 of them share with us in our Class 6 rankings. There are 6 that are doing better than us. The other thing I want to look at here is a little bit of how communities get their average credits. So we do 3 really big things in the city of St. Mary's. We do public outreach and information. So we're about to do mass mailing, hard copy mailing with flood insurance information, as well as some hurricane preparedness and flood risk reduction information to 3,000 addresses in our special flood hazard area. So that mass mailing mixed with presentations like this one, with the report that City Council will hear and vote on this evening, are part of our larger public information processes. But you'll see, I know this font is really hard for you guys to see, but the main way that communities get their credit here is through higher regulatory standards. So I'd like to just pause on that one a little bit and take you to our ordinances. So if any of you have taken the time to navigate the City of St. Mary's ordinances, perhaps you've dabbled in the zoning ordinance, or perhaps you went in to look at, I don't know, nuisance or litter or something like that. We have a whole chapter on floods, and that's chapter 54. So this chapter, this is an adopted ordinance by council, which gets us the majority of our CRS credits. And so there's a couple of interesting things in this ordinance. One is that the City of St. Mary's has adopted 2 feet of what they call freeboard. So you might hear this when you're talking about flood compliance. So what is that? Through looking at our flood insurance rate maps, which I'll also discuss, in our special flood hazard areas, which would be the AE and VE zones, we have determined what the base flood elevation is. And that is the flood, the elevation that water will get to with a flood that will happen once in 100 years. So it's the 1% flood. So, for example, my home is just out of the floodplain. It's in the X zone, which we don't regulate, the X zone. And the base flood elevation in that surrounding area is 10. Okay? So what we in the city do is that if you're doing a new construction, so any new home, the lowest floor level, so the finished floor level in which you have conditioned air, you have living space, that is considered part of your home, that has to be at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation. Not all communities do that, right? So we've adopted a higher standard that if you're building new, the lowest level of habitable space has to be 2 feet above that base flood elevation. And that's something that we regulate through elevation certificates, both in your design and in your finished construction. So if any of you have built homes in the city, you probably had to submit something like that.
Could I interrupt for
Sure.
a minute? Because I don't want to take time from being able to get this all done.
Sure.
So the base flood elevation is like 0.
No, let me, I'll navigate to a
Because I'm
definitions
wondering,
page and help.
You know, where do you find zero?
Yep, okay, so I can assist with that. The other thing I want to talk about in the flood ordinance is it doesn't only apply to new construction. It also applies to something called substantial improvement, and very important during hurricane season, substantial damage. So there is calculus. When it comes to substantial improvement, if you have a home which is not floodplain compliant per our current ordinance, and you are doing, let's say the home is worth $250,000, and you're putting on a $200,000 addition, you're going to build your dream house onto your existing house. In that act, you will have spent more than 50% of the assessed value of your property. That is considered a substantial improvement, and my office will be asking you if the property is floodplain compliant. So that's the other thing that we look at when we talk about higher regulatory standards, and that's the bulk of our credit that we get in the community rating system. So public information, higher regulatory standards, and then this one right here, this map information service, and this is getting to your question, Mr. Mayor. So I want to go back to our page, and I want to highlight a few of these common definitions on the front page. So first I want to talk about a special flood hazard area. This is the land area covered by the flood waters of the base flood, and that is the special flood hazard area on our National Flood Insurance Program maps. The special flood hazard area is the area where the National Flood Insurance Program's floodplain management regulations must be enforced, and the area where the mandatory purchase of flood insurance applies. These zones include the A, the AO, the AH, the A1, the AE, the VE. Okay, V and VE. So the city of St. Mary's has very little VE and quite a bit of AE. Okay, then I want to kind of give this definition of base flood. The flood having a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded in any given year. This is the regulatory standard also referred to as the 100-year flood. The base flood is the national standard used by the National Flood Insurance Program and all federal agencies for the purposes of requiring the purchase of flood insurance and regulating new development. Base flood elevations are typically shown on flood insurance rate maps or firms. So to get to your point, Mr. Mayor, there is a datum that land surveyors and others use when they're doing an elevation certificate and they're looking at ground elevation compared to mean high tide and mean water levels. And so that is the elevation. So, the ground elevation of your home might be, if your home in downtown, might be right around 7 or 8, and the base flood elevation might be 10. So you're looking at the natural elevation of the ground might be at elevation 8, and you may have to go up 2 feet to get your home to just the base flood elevation, and then you have to go up another 2 feet to meet our higher regulatory standards of base flood elevation plus 2. Okay, all right, so heading back to a couple of things that we do. So one way that we try to assist through our mapping information system, right here on the website, you'll see this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sitting there thinking about it. Sorry I didn't get you quick.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure I wanted to ask this, but not sound too dumb. But if you have your home and you want, and it's a $200,000 home.
Yes.
Whatever you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to do $150,000 worth of improvements.
Mhm.
But you're not raising, not planning to raise the level of that house. You're in a AE zone.
Mhm.
Basic flood elevation was 9
Mhm.
to start. Does that mean you have to raise the whole structure?
Gr-
to get it,
Great question. So I'm going to say that that's on a case-by-case basis in which your design professional, your engineer, your architect can work with the city to understand how your home can become floodplain compliant. One of the other areas that we spend some time in how we convey this information to the public is to keep a flood protection library. So we have both the hard copy one and we also have a digital one. And so here on this part of our website, there are links to several different resources. And you'll see one here is a link to basically flood proofing your home. So how to flood-proof your home. So there are a variety of different ways that you can do it. If you're not elevating, perhaps you're utilizing flood vents or something like that. So it's a case-by-case basis.
I've got a question.
Sure.
You said that was based upon the high tide, is that correct?
I want a surveyor to answer the mean, the datum in which they establish base flood elevation. I'm out of my league with your question.
Ma'am?
I can't answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, sure. Okay, so now I want to go back to, let's see, where was I? All right, so if you want more information on your property, there is a part of our website here called Request Flood Risk Information. You can go there, you can put in your name, your address, your phone, and your email, and your parcel ID, and that will shoot me an email. And what I will produce for you is part of our mapping information service. So if any of you, your mortgage lender asks you for a floodplain determination letter, this is that letter, and this is how you would request that from my office. So what we do is we go and we look at FEMA's flood maps and our flood insurance rate maps, and we find your panel, we find where your home is, we find if you are in a special flood hazard area, we indicate that. If you or your property has an elevation certificate on file with us in the building department, we'll also provide that. Give you a nice signature on that letter, and then we'll provide you with a copy of what's referred to as a fermet. And this is done off of this type of map is generated off of FEMA's Mapping Service Center. And what you're seeing here is this particular home that requested this letter. You see that they are in an orange shaded area, which is the X zone, which we do not regulate, and they're surrounded by zone AE. So this type of letter is particularly effective for properties that may be just out of the special flood hazard area. So this is the type of document that we would provide for you if you went onto our website and requested information on your flood risk. I can also say that some of the other things that we do, and I'm being cognizant of my time here, in addition to requesting flood risk information, we also do provide that the Public Works Department, if you have some persistent drainage or flooding challenges, part of the community rating system is that residents can call the Public Works Department and get some free advice and guidance on how to mitigate some of those challenges. And all of that data together can usually help properties that have frequent flooding get to a point where they can reduce some of their risks. Okay, so also part of the council's packet this evening is a report on the other things that we do as part of the community rating system. So you'll see here, in addition to the website content and in addition to the mapping information service that we provide, we do repetitive loss mailings. So we do have properties that have repeat claims to the National Flood Insurance Program for losses. So we send out a special and specific letter for those addresses. Also, I spoke about how we were sending out mailings to our special flood hazard area properties, which the latest data I found was about 1,400 buildings, but I think it might actually be more than that. So I think it would be good for us to reevaluate the amount of structures that we've built and how many letters or properties we're actually sending this information to. We also provide brochures. You've seen these probably in City Hall or at the library and also in our offices. And again, that floodplain consultation that you can receive from my office and these types of public announcements. If you're just curious and you want to be able to see your floodplain without going through all of that, on our website, we do have a link to what we call the city's web map. This is a really great tool. It's a great resource. You can get to it right off of the community development website. Once you navigate to the page, up here in this top handbar, you can put in your address, and you can see that I've done that for where we are now, 418 Osborne. So right now, this is highlighting City Hall. The colors that you're seeing, these are your zoning layers, right? But the cool thing about this map is that you can go up to this thing that looks like a stack of papers. You can click on it, And you can see all the different layers that are embedded in this map. So if I take off the zoning, you'll see that those colors go away. If I scroll down here and I click on the flood zone, then you'll see the flood zone come up. So any of you who are thinking about acquiring property, or you're wondering if you're in the floodplain, this is a really great, quick tool. And then if you want further documentation, you can use our mapping information services and request that information. Okay. I want to get back here, and I want to end with this, it's probably timely. I want to end with some of the information that we have here on the hurricane and flood readiness section of our website. Again, just some really strong guidance here. I know we're currently preparing for Hurricane Milton. Many of you have been here for years, but if you're someone like me, this is new to you, and you may not know, that you call down here, 1-877-MY-GEORGIA-511 to figure out where your evacuation routes are and how they're looking and where you can get gas and other things like that. There is also a link to the Camden County Emergency Management page. The city does a lot of updates on Facebook, and so does the county. If you're preparing, you want to make sure that you have at least 3 days of supplies, right? And so the one thing that I'll leave you with here, just if any of you are fans of PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service, they have a great news hour, and they just ran last night. There was a news hour devoted to the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And, for me, it kind of brings into question the idea of the National Flood Insurance Program, and we in communities that are low-lying, and how we kind of prepare for these flooding events and what seems to be more extreme and more frequent flooding events. I've asked quite a few people, I'm always asking, is this a normal season? Does this feel a little bit more than normal? And what I'm hearing is that it's more than normal. So the PBS NewsHour segment, you have to fish through this link to find the content, but there's a great discussion with a professor from Columbia University, and he talks about the work that he's doing right now with at-risk communities. And it's really not so much around not building or developing within special flood hazard areas, because some of the things that we're seeing is not all communities are safe from these events, particularly coastal communities in history have been at risk, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And the professor really emphasizes the importance of building codes, of preparation, of bolstering our infrastructure, of creating resiliency in our public spaces, our public institutions, and our infrastructure. So I think I'll leave you with that in terms of this public information meeting, and happy to take maybe 6 minutes worth of questions if you have them.
So a couple of observations, and just to get things started. Over the next 20 years, we hear a lot about sea rise level.
Mm-hmm.
Does as sea rise level occurs,
Mm-hmm.
changes the whole baseline elevation
Yep,
metrics?
it does.
How that gets calculated?
Yep. So those areas, the special flood hazard areas, are based on the percentage of a certain type of flood happening in that area. So as the 500-year storm becomes the 25-year storm, those maps change. And so, for example, the county, Camden County, they actually regulate the X zone. We don't regulate the X. So again, if you go back to this area of the city and you look at the web map, what you're seeing in blue is the AE zone. That is a special flood hazard area. If you own property in there that is backed by a lender or a mortgage, you have to get flood insurance. If you're just across the street, you don't have to. A lot of the thinking is that as sea level is rising, as these storms become more and more intense or more frequent, that it is prudent to begin to regulate the X, because eventually the X will become the AE. So that's kind of the thinking.
Yeah, and so it's just, again, I don't want to misinform the public, but just because you're not in the flood zone doesn't mean that you may want to
Yeah.
look at where you are, your proximity to it, and decide whether or not you may want to get
Yeah,
flood insurance despite the fact that you're not in it.
absolutely. And part of that PBS documentation that I like so much was that these models of developing these special flood hazard area and our flood insurance rate maps are not really great at what I would call, I guess, riverine flooding or flooding of small tributaries or around rivers. They're actually better calculated for coastal flooding. So, a lot of the communities, such as Asheville, North Carolina, but other areas that did have a risk of flooding, the systems that we have aren't necessarily structured for that. So I guess the takeaway is you don't have to be in a special flood hazard area to be impacted by flooding, and you definitely don't have to be in a special flood hazard area to get flood insurance.
So, and then observationally, about 20% of our buildings are probably paying flood insurance, roughly.
I would have to know I don't know that data. For my first question is, are 20% of our buildings backed by a mortgage lender? And then my other question is, yeah, that would be, because you don't, if I mean, this is getting into the weeds, but if you fully outright own your property, it's not mandatory that you have flood insurance. But if you have a mortgage, then it becomes mandatory. Any other questions?
Okay. Yeah.
I think you answered this question, but this extreme flooding that took place up in Asheville, those areas, do you know if they even make available flood insurance in those areas? I don't think they have anything like AE.
No, they do not have special flood hazard areas, and so that PBS documentation that I was referencing, they go into talking about how communities such as that are around many small rivers or even larger rivers, the impact of that kind of torrential rain isn't really in that calculation of the flood insurance rate maps. So I'm sure they could take out a flood insurance policy, but whether it was mandatory, I don't think so. And that's raising a really good point that I just wanted to talk about in terms of hurricane preparedness. Many of you saw in the aftermath of Helene, city vehicles out and about and all around. So that is the damage assessment part of our hurricane preparedness. So the Community Development Department coordinates both the damage assessment and also overall floodplain management. But if you do experience substantial flooding, it is also the Community Development Department that will make that designation with you and assist you in getting that to FEMA. So just keeping that in mind. I mean, all of our events are different, but there is a scenario in which a lot of flooding occurs, and then the city, while we're doing our damage assessment, would also have to provide substantial damage determinations for properties.
Yeah, and that's the, what do they call it? AIPI,
Not sure. AIPI.
the two designations that we work on.
Oh, PA.
PA,
and I. I is the individual
visual
assessment.
assessment, and
Oh, I'm sorry,
P
okay.
is the public assessment.
The damage assessment.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, that's how we go through it, but, so the amount of, I'll just say this, the amount of work it takes to get the CRS rating information together and then confirmed and then put out and everything, that is a substantial amount of work. And we, the public gets 20%, as you've heard, 20% savings on their flood insurance because of the work the city does. But it's a big effort on the part of staff, and we've been doing it since 2017.
16 is what,
16,
yeah.
So, And so we kick-started it, and we kept going it along with some of the other entities in the county. And I think the people that come after us the next 10 years and 20 years are going to have, there's going to be a lot of reassessments, I have to think. That goes along with like the spine effort and all of
Right.
the things we're trying to do to help mitigate or give us some tools to be able to control flooding and at least understand that. So I hope this was helpful, and if I could, I'd like to allow just like two questions, if the
Okay.
public would like to come up. And just, if you can, try to not make it too personal, so it can be a little bit universally applied with
Sure.
your question. But if it's somebody'd like to come up for clarity, we could take a couple of people.
I'll go ahead and ask a real quick question, just to reinforce the number. I hope I know the answer to this, but that
I hope I do too.
the percentage that the public saves on purchasing the flood insurance as a result of what we do with the CRS program applies across the board, correct? Both the people that live in X-rated areas and the people that live in AE areas?
Yes.
Take advantage of that policy.
Yes, but I believe, as the gentleman in the audience referenced, if you're not in the special flood hazard area, your rates are not as high as if you are. So,
They've gotten pretty high over the past few years. So,
So our friends at FEMA seem to be trying to make it clear to everybody what it is that they're doing and not doing, and it's particularly focused on Western North Carolina. But we have regular communication with FEMA, particularly when it comes to the hurricanes and all the reporting and the sorting of vegetative debris into about 4 different sections. And I know you remember this probably more from, what was the one from, was it Irma?
Irma was the one
The
that we
big
had.
one with the
yeah.
debris that we had to have Douglas Drive and the huge different piles and everything. And if you didn't follow their instructions, you weren't going to get anything. So that's why I think we had to be as rigid with the signage and everything else. But everybody was really good with helping us make sure that was right. So, yeah, congratulations, because it's been approved, right?
what's that?
It's been, our CRS is approved.
Well, first, y'all have to approve my PPI report this evening.
Okay.
And then after that, we submit our first round to FEMA on October 15th.
Okay.
And then I'll know after that.
And hopefully that'll be
Yeah,
responsive.
I think we'll do great.
Yeah, good. Okay, and so I want to thank everyone for attending and for listening. It's something that's very important, and Jamie's department does a great job of getting us prepared. And if you got some questions about how do I get to, and then there's a couple of other agencies / groups that I can't remember who they are, but they have some modeling tools where you can put in variables, and if you want to see if the risk models are higher or lower or more sustained, and they'll help you see what the future can look like.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yep, those are available on the website. Yep.
There- Okay, I was going to answer. Good.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
All right. I'm going to close this meeting and say thank you, everyone, and we're going to start at 6 o'clock with our city council.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamie. Artie, hi. Oh.
Yeah, you just spin the microphone down.
Which says from stay or what? But you'll be
I
there
don't
to
know
help
if
me
that's
with
working,
this.
because it's not charging us. It's green, but it never charged it. make sure it's, is it plugged in? Is this plugged in?
Alan?
I don't know if it's. Is it never been charged up?